My hair is having one of those days where no matter what I do to it, it's just like, no. Good morning everyone, welcome to Eternally Awkward. I'm Penny. Today is my second video in my Back to Basics series. Today we're going to be focusing on foundation, how to choose the right foundation for you, application techniques, and how to set it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So now that we have applied our primer and allowed it to soak in for a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and apply foundation. There are three main types of foundation: powder, cream and liquid. The right type of foundation for you will be personal preference. I prefer liquid because I find it looks most natural on the skin. Cream based products are great for long lasting makeup, but I do find that they can look a bit heavy on the skin, and I feel them on my skin. And powder foundations, personally I think they look just that, powdery. It's very noticeable when somebody's wearing a powder foundation in my experience, but they can be good for oily skin. There's three different types of foundation: oil based, water based and silicone based. And now that you've chosen a primer, you should choose a foundation that ties in with your primer. I have applied a primer that is both water and silicone based, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the different application technique. I'm going to start with the powder foundation, and then I'm going to take it off and I'm going to apply a liquid. With the powder foundation, you're definitely going to want to apply a primer, or else it's basically not going to stick to the skin. So I've just ground out some powder here. I'm going to pick some up on a brush, tap off the excess and press it into the skin, and then really buff it in. There you go, that is a powder foundation. One thing I do really like about powder foundations is it's super fast to apply, super easy to get to look even. The problem is it will cling to any dry patches, so it's definitely not for dry skin. With powder, a round top brush is definitely best for buffing powder foundation into the skin. It's going to give you the best coverage and the most natural look that you can get with a powder. So I've reapplied primer on this side of my face. So now we're going to go in with a liquid foundation. There are several different consistencies of liquid foundations. Some can be super thick, like this one. Look at that. Ain't moving. And some can be super runny, like that one. The thicker ones are closer to a cream consistency, and yet again I find that they do sit on the skin and look heavier. Now there's three different ways you can apply a liquid foundation: with a sponge, with a brush, or with your fingers. Personally, I don't like fingers. I think that it leaves a bit of a streaky mess. You can kind of see fingerprints in it. Now, brushes. There is more than one brush that you can use. You can use a paddle brush, you can use a flat top brush, you can use an angled brush, or you can use a buffing brush. Personally, I like to use a flat top brush. Paddle brushes, please do not use a paddle brush. It leaves streaks in the foundation. Everyone can see the streaks. If you use that, please go over it with something like a sponge. So I'm just going to pick up this. Whose idea was it to wear white during a foundation video? Somebody's not that clever. Now with a lot of foundations, a flat top foundation brush can actually result in better coverage. With other foundations it won't make a difference, so it is actually something to experiment and try out. Now with this you want to stipple, i.e. press it into the skin. The minute you start buffing, you're going to start losing coverage, creating cakiness and gathering and shifting the foundation around your face rather than pressing it into the skin so it becomes one with your face. I do like to go over my eyelid just so that they match the rest of my face. So the other way that you can apply a liquid foundation, given that I'm not going to use my fingers, is a blending sponge. Now there's lots of blending sponges on the market. I really enjoy the Chi Chi blending sponges. They can be a wee bit dense to begin with, but after about 2 to 3 uses they really soften up. So I like to pick some up on my sponge and go in and blend that in. Often your ears aren't as dark as the rest of your body, so I like to blend foundation over them so that they match, or else it can end up looking a bit weird. Personally, I prefer the way a sponge leaves the skin looking. I think it's a more flawless, seamless, skin-like finish compared to a brush. Like I said, depending on the foundation, you can end up getting much better coverage with a brush. Often if I'm using a brush, I'll go back over it with a sponge just to really press it into the skin. Now after you apply a liquid foundation, I like to go in and set it with a powder. Now setting it with a powder stops it from transferring onto other things. It stops it coming off your face and basically helps it last longer over the day. And for oily people, this helps control oil when it starts coming through. Sort of soaks it up per se. So I like to take a clean sponge and press that evenly over the entire face. A wee bit too energetically and just powdered my eyeball. That doesn't feel great. And make sure to remove any powder around your nose so it doesn't look like you had too good of a night last night. I need to apply some eye drops because that powder hurts. That is not a fun time at all. Powder can be applied with a sponge, or it can be applied with a large fluffy brush or a powder puff. A brush is a perfectly fine option. You dip your brush in, tap off excess and press into the skin. Now you can either set this with a loose powder or you can set it with a pressed powder. I don't like the messiness of a loose powder, but I find it looks better on the skin, and I find that a loose powder controls my oil better. I don't really like to apply powder with a little powder puff. I do on occasion, but mostly it's a sponge because the sponge really presses it into the skin and leaves it one with the skin. Because I'm a big fan of makeup looking as natural as this much makeup possibly can. Apply powder, you want to press it into the skin. Yet again, you start doing this, you're going to take away foundation under the powder, you're going to start shifting everything, going to leave a streaky muddy mess. That's all for today. I hope you found this helpful. Please subscribe to my channel and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!